Good morning, App Properties. Happy Wednesday, April 22nd. It's great to be with all of you again. I'm Amy Corr, and I'm joined by Kevin Van Eck, who's live out of our Goose Island office. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Coffee with Amy and Kevin.
Good morning, Amy. Hope you're doing well. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us again. Today is Wednesday. We're doing a broker perspective again. And today we have someone from the city and someone that if you know him, you know that these topics are run right through his business. They are the core. And so today we're going to talk about routines and time management. We're going to talk a little bit about motivation and accountability, and then also what this broker has had to do to modify those routines or communication, time management through what we've been going through over the last 4 weeks.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. This morning, I'm excited to have Sohail Salahuddin from our Bucktown office with us. Sohail has been in the business for over 15 years, starting first on the mortgage side and then shifting into rentals and sales during the recession. Sohail, thanks for joining us this morning.
My pleasure. Good morning, Kevin. Good morning, Amy. Happy to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. So, we wanted to get a little bit of insight into your background because you run a pretty amazing business at App Properties, but I wanted to know what's your background, before you got into real estate, kind of what led up to your career to App Properties?
Sure. So I actually went to school. I graduated from an IT school. I have a degree in network engineering. And by the time I graduated, I wanted nothing to do with computers. I got into real estate because I actually hit a low point in my life. I hit rock bottom 3 times. This is one of them. And when I was trying to climb my way out, I had a friend of mine that said, why don't you just go to work in a mortgage company? And I said, I didn't know anything about mortgages at the time, but I asked him about what it was like, what I have to do. So an introduction was made. Didn't really do anything but sit at a desk for 3 months because nobody taught me anything. So from that's when I got my first taste of sales and relationships. So I left that mortgage company, started my own with a partner, and it was going okay, and it started getting better and better. And then we were doing really well, and then bam, right, the housing market crash started happening. So then we formed a company, and we called it Rent Smart Chicago, and we aimed it towards mostly leasing. Although we did still do sales, but of course sales were diminishing every day that went on. The rental side picked up. We went from 5 people in one location to over 506 locations within a year or two. I mean, it just blew up. We were doing very well, and then I got out of that because I was having issues with partners, and then what I realized was that when money starts coming into play, it changes people. And when you're not on the same page, like Mike and Thad, it changes people for the worse sometimes. And that's what happened. So I ended up going to Jameson Sotheby's, brought some people with me, formed a team. I didn't know what a team was. I really just had a mini brokerage inside of a brokerage, right? So that was my first experience to realize, okay, there's no efficiency here. This is not a team. I was at Jameson for a few years and then met with George and came over to I think in 2014. And so I've been here since.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. That's an interesting history. So you have a long period of time in real estate since 2005 when you started in mortgages. But over that time, you've interacted with, hundreds, thousands probably of real estate professionals. One of the things we know that's a challenge for real estate professionals, for brokers specifically, and being independent contractors is following a routine. Because there's no one telling us where to be at a specific time. There's no one telling us when we can leave. So we're responsible for ourselves. For you, anyone that knows you or follows you on social media is probably very aware that you have a routine. They can see it in what you do. So for you, for your process and routine, what is it like? What is it like in a normal world outside of COVID? And are there changes you've had to make because of the environment, the shelter in place and everything else that's going on around us?
So honestly, I really didn't change that much in my routine. So my routine's very, I want to say military-like. I've put this together over the years and it works for me very well. But I wake up at around 2:15, 2:30 in the morning. First thing I do, because I think it's important to know that right when you wake up, there's a lot of chemical reactions that occur within your body and your mind. And the first thing that you think about starts to carry on what you're thinking about as the days goes on. So the first thing I do before I even get out of bed is, of course, turn off my alarm clock, which is on the other side of the room so I can get up. But then I just sit down and think everything I'm grateful for to put myself in a state of gratitude. Then I don't sit up yet. I put my AirPods in my ears. I put on something motivational, and then I go and drink an energy drink, come down to my office / workout room, which you see here. And I'll do about 20, 30 minutes of cardio to get my body going while I read, to get my mind going. And I can kind of speed read. It's my own way of speed reading, so I can get through a lot. And from there, I go make a shake. And as you can see, this is all habit, because I've been doing it for so long. I go make a shake. After the shake, I come back, I read another book for 10 minutes. I time myself for 10 minutes. And then from there, I go and write in my journal, which is a gratitude / goal journal. And after that, I go and meditate for about 15 to 20 minutes. From then, I wake up my wife and we go to the gym and we do weights. So that's my morning routine. Then when I come home, I typically start planning out my day, which really it's planned for years to come. I don't have to do much, but the one thing that I do have to do is just make sure that I know who I have to call, what time I have to call them, what I'm going to say. Very important. Hey, Kevin, how you doing? None of that happens. I know exactly what to say. I pace myself, smile on the phone. I give them 2 updates. I engage with them back. And then I ask them if they have any questions, concerns, and I end the call with asking for referrals. And it's like, welcome to McDonald's. Can I take your order, please? Same thing. I know it sounds very redundant, but you just build efficiency and become more skillful at that. You don't have to change it. Just become better at what you're doing. So then I delegate to my team. I role play at 7:20, 7:30 in the morning for about 15 to 20 minutes. And then I start getting to action. So that's when I start my prospecting right away, about 7:45, 8 a.m. And then the rest of my day is pretty much filled with calls. So from 8 until 9, I'm calling cancel expired listings. From 9 to 10, I call them a second time because they might be dropping off their kids at the bus or who knows, right? They may be sleeping. Then from 10 to 11, I call all my hot leads, people who I've already spoken with, and I think they're ready to do something. I need to be a little persistent and poke. From 11 to 12, I call the for sale by owners. From 12 to 1, I call the canceled expireds a third time. From 1 to 2, I'm calling my past clients. And then 2 to 4, right around there is when I go my listing presentations. And so that's changed because now they're Zoom presentations, right? And when I set the appointment now, I'm asking them, we can meet virtually via Zoom, Skype, or Google Hangout, or we can meet in person. What are you comfortable with? Before I'm a little bit, I don't ask. In the past, I didn't ask for the appointment. I kind of, in my own way, set it. Just so I can be a little authoritative and take a little leadership of the conversation. But now I'm asking with empathy, what are you comfortable with? And I think right now we're about 50% Zoom, 50% in-person presentations. And if I don't have a listing presentation, I usually practice any skills that I'm working on. My communication skills, my presentation skills, that's what I use that time with. And then from 4 to 5, I call just listed, just solds, which is kind of like circle prospecting. From 5 to 6, I call my leads again. And then from 6 to 7, I call the canceled expireds a 4th time. And then that's pretty much how my day ends.
That's a routine. Amy, I want to tell you, tomorrow we are going to start filming at 3:30 a.m. We are starting a new routine.
I'm ready for it. It's so funny because I actually made sure that I got up and worked out this morning because I knew that when I was getting up at 5:30, Sohail was either already at the gym. He was actually probably already making phone calls. So I knew I had to, at least of all mornings, get myself up. So it's pretty impressive. And, I think one of the questions that I want to ask, or I'm curious about is, how did you develop this routine? Because, you have everything just, completely broken down. Is it something that you developed over time? Do you have a coach that you work with? How did you kind of come up with this? And I'm guessing that at some point, you've sort of fine-tuned and tweaked what has worked really well for you.
That's right, Amy. So let me just tell you why I woke up at 2:30, because I know everybody's like, what's wrong with that guy, right? I did it because typically I have a hard time stopping. I have a hard time being still, not working. Once I start working, I just feel like there's more to do, more to do. So years ago, my marriage wasn't that great. My relationship with my kids wasn't well, because I would wake up, go to the gym, come home at 6:30, get ready, leave for work. I might be home by the time they're sleeping, or I'd come home and I'd go back to work again and go to bed at midnight. And so that wasn't working with my kids. I had what I would say, I was too zoned in on working. And I had a really negative mindset at the time, because I thought work was so important. My wife did try to talk to me about it a bunch of times, and I became reactive with her in a negative way, like, well, who's going to pay the bills? Who's going to do this? Which is, I'm completely ashamed of. But the best thing I did was to realize it. And so I thought to myself, if I can go to bed earlier, I can wake up earlier. And if I can go to bed earlier, anything I need to do at night, I can now do in the morning if I wake up earlier. So that's what caused me. And if I was waking up at 5, I started waking up at 4:30 for maybe a week or two. Then I went to 4. Then I went to 3:45. Then I went to 3:30. Then I went to 3:15, 3, 2:45, 2:30, 2:15. And that's how I eased my body into it. And so my body started, I believe, I've done the research, my body started to become more efficient at sleeping. So now, if it's very rare that if, let's say, my alarm doesn't go off, I'm still going to wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning. And now I can't go back to sleep.
So you've got this routine, and that's impressive. I love that you shared that story, because that was a realization that things needed to change, not only, professionally to make sure that you're getting everything done with work, but personally. So what motivates you? Because I'm sure that was a very tough time. And you mentioned earlier that, you've hit rock bottom a few times in your life. What, whether it's something you think through at 2:30 a.m. or something you think through before you go to bed, what motivates you to keep going, especially when times are tough?
To break through the challenge, I think. So I did hit rock bottom 3 times. I know what it's like not to have literally nothing, and maybe even worse than that. But let me just tell you, I grew up in a very great environment. Father did very well. So I grew up in a wealthy neighborhood. My father, he made a lot of money. I was spoiled. I pretty much, got anything I asked for to a certain extent within reason. But then when I felt the first feeling of pain and loss and suffering, it started changing me, because for a while I became a victim, and then I knew no one was going to help me. And so I didn't really want the help either. So I pulled myself out of it. And that's when I started realizing that I have control and I can start taking action and change things. And so every time that again, with Rent Smart Chicago, I hit rock bottom again. As an example, I was fighting a lawsuit. That's with partners at the time. And so just to give some insight of, no matter how bad things get, you'll pull yourself out of it. You can pull yourself out of this situation. There's always opportunity through every challenging time. So it got so bad that I had a big house, very expensive. I had expensive cars, I had expensive lifestyle. And I would wake up looking at my wife crying and saying, I'm so sorry I did this to you. And she was extremely supportive, saying, you didn't do this, you're going to get through it. That's how my wife is. Like, you can do this, If I was going to tell her I'd fly to the moon, she's like, oh, I know you're going to. When are you going to do it by? That's my wife's enthusiasm for just believing in me. So I would say it's important to understand that you have to have a purpose as to why you're doing something. For me, it's my family. I know this sounds kind of strange, but because I felt a lot of pain and suffering, I kind of like it. Not that I like to be in the moment, but I like to get through it, because it's like climbing Mount Everest. When you climb Mount Everest, I mean, you're facing death, hypothermia, who knows, right? Exhaustion. When you get to the top, that's the reward. And so when you go through challenging times, I'm constantly like to put myself through challenging times, because I know that there's a reward at the end of that. And I know it could be a big reward. So the more challenging it is, the bigger the reward is going to be, most likely. And this time is no different. Let me just tell you, excuse me, let me take some water. The first week that the corona hit, I got into stall mode. I started to worry. My wife's like, what are we going to do? And at the same time, when I'm like, we're going to be fine, we're going to pull through this, in the back of my mind, I was still, didn't know what was going on, trying to figure it out. So I was worried instead of the solution. The second week, I started realizing that if I just continued to work as if, I think that things will come as if. And so the first week I did it, my team got on board, thank God. And so we persisted through, and then sure enough, it just started picking up again. We started signing appointments again. Buyers started coming out again. I think that in the past 2 weeks, we put more properties under contract in the 2 week span than in a typical 2 week span. And so I learned a lesson just out of this, which is to stay away from negativity. Sorry, it doesn't matter what someone says, because that's not my reality, and I can focus on my own future and create my own reality. And that's what I did. So it was just persisting through, knowing my purpose, knowing why I get up in the morning. And I think that's what motivates me, because I know that there's something at the end of everything I do. It's like working out. So I used to bodybuild, and I think I get a lot of this from working out, is that I know even as painful as a heavy set of squat is, and it's like a near-death experience because you start seeing stars. But if you keep doing it, because at the time you hate it, but if you keep doing it, you start to fall in love with it. And then you start to see the results, and you're like, wow. And that is just like this.
It's amazing, because I do feel like mindset is just such a big player here for so many people. And, I love that you were so real about the fact that, you in your business are so structured. You know what time you're getting up, when you're making certain phone calls, but even something like this rattled you. So imagine, this people that maybe don't have as much of a schedule, this has really been a time where people have really had to look deep, I think, and have had to pivot and have had to recognize, similar to you, I can sit here and kind of freak out, or I can recognize what I can do and what I can control and just move forward with that. So what I do want to ask you, I'm so curious about is, it almost seems like you don't need an accountability buddy, because, so much of this comes internal from you. It sounds like maybe some of who holds you accountable might be your wife, but how do you hold yourself accountable? Is there anybody from a business standpoint that you check in with? Is it your team? Is it, I'm just kind of curious, because even, I have to say, I show up here at 7:30 because Kevin holds me accountable, because he's going to be really mad if he has to do this show alone. So I'm just kind of curious for you, because there's a lot of discipline, there's a lot of mindset, but from an accountability standpoint, who kind of holds your feet to the fire?
Sure. So number one, I rely on myself, but I'm also smart enough to know that as much as I can look within, I still need to learn by somebody external. And I do have a coach, and I pay him a lot of money, but I'll tell you, it's invaluable. I mean, even if he just taught me how to change one word, and I'll share this with you. I shared in the communication. If one of my friends called me and said, let's go to the Bears game, I have season tickets, but my wife is in the background. And if I say, well, I can't, I have to go to dinner with her. If she hears that, that's not going to be good. But if I say I can't, I get to go to dinner with her, it's a whole different perception. So these little intricate details he's taught me a lot about mindset, a lot about speaking with people and understanding their mindset, especially with like price reductions. People have an attachment to $10,000, but at the same time, their dream is to move to Florida. So I have to help them break through. It's a lot of psychology. I have to help them break through that mental attachment to $10,000. But he taught me that. So he helps me, he teaches me, and he holds me accountable, because I do have to share my schedule with him. I have to share how many people I've called, how many contacts, how many listing appointments, my ratios of listing appointments to listings taken, all of our sales, price reductions. So I guess it is very detailed. But I just track them at the end of the day. That's part of I do have an evening routine as well. And that's part of it. And then my team does hold me accountable, because I want them to see me as leadership and guiding them, to show them, like, this is what you got to do. That's the only reason my team holds me accountable. I don't want to let them down.
I want to go back to the communication. That's great. That the accountability is that you have multiple sources of accountability. You know, you realize that you can't do it yourself, because I think there are very few, I don't think there's anybody really that without someone else that they feel accountable to can be as successful as their potential allows. So with that, I do want to go back to the communication piece though, because I just learned something great from you. You know, over the last couple of weeks, people have been saying, wow, you have to do coffee with Amy and Kevin every morning. Now I can say, you know, I get to do it with Amy. I get to wake up early and see Amy every morning and do this, because truly that mindset, that small shift, even internally, not just, you know, because someone is listening to me, that was a great piece of advice. So I hope everyone watching caught that. Because that changes the way you feel internally, not just the way someone else receives it maybe, but for myself. So that's great. I do want to ask about communication then, because, you know, how has communication changed for you? Because you know, at the last expo, you led a small group in terms of effective communication. I know communication is very important in our business, but for you specifically, especially when you talk about how many phone calls you make and how many conversations you have each day, what has communication been like for you over the last several weeks?
So I'm calling my current clients more. My message is different from a point of more statistics or what we have to do and what we did this week. You know, what are we going to do next week? To letting them know that the market's moving, the optimism. And I share that in a few different ways, but I'm also telling them these 2 homes sold last week or went under contract. So just to keep encouraging them to keep moving, you know, that even though it's a challenging time and there's so much negativity that's spewed out at them from the news and, you know, everywhere else, but helping them stay focused on what the goal is. And not everybody understands that, because so many people that I've been working with have went into just disastrous fear mode where they're frozen inside their home. And, you know, those people I have to show empathy towards. I understand. Let's put the market in the PLN or take it off. First time I ever found the PLN to be useful. So it's that understanding, you know, that empathy. And so I'm not as authoritative with them. I'm more coming them from a point of understanding and empathy. So it's a different conversation. Even though I'm trying to get the message across the same, it's still worded and expressed differently. And then my past clients, I've always called them every quarter and sent them little things in the mail. But this time we put together a stress relief package, kind of like the CAP package, but I did my own. And it's just to make them laugh, little things, you know, hand sanitizer and branded stuff. And so that was being sent out to all of our past clients and current clients. So it's still a lot of communication. The approach is different. And so anybody that's watching, I just want to say that communication is vital. And it's not just how many times you talk to them, it's how you talk to them. Do they understand you? Are you talking too fast? Are you engaging with them? Because I know I've seen agents call and talk, and any questions? So it's more of asking questions, engaging, getting them in the conversation, and leading them for whatever that the purpose of that conversation is. You have to lead them and engage them to where you want it to end, or what you want to get out of it, and you want them to get out of it.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And I think what I'm hearing you say in regards to, you know, communicating is really listening to what their needs are right now, because everybody is reacting to what's going on right now quite differently. So we're limited now in some areas. For example, in Michigan, we're completely locked down and agents cannot, it's not even an essential service right now as far as real estate services. So what would you say are the must-do activities right now for agents?
Prospect. Their home. I'm always going to say this, and I know, you know, it's a tough thing to do. It was tough for me when I first started doing it. And let me just clarify, prospecting it can happen in many different ways. It doesn't necessarily have to be cold calling. Calling your past clients is prospecting. Calling your circle of influence or your business partners, like your mortgage person, your attorney, that's prospecting. Finding new business partners, divorce attorneys. Maybe you're going to start tapping into probate, wealth management. That's a form of prospecting. So I'm not telling everybody can't call, cancel, expires, and FSBOs. You don't have to do that. But what I am saying is that you have to talk to people throughout the day to see who you can help that wants to buy or sell real estate, or who do they know. That's your job. Your job is to help people. And if you're not coming from a place of contribution saying, who can I help today? Then probably you're having a hard time with it up here. So come from contribution, make those phone calls. Even if you have resistance in the back of your head, know that you're doing it from a good place. You're coming to help. And that should make a difference in everybody's business in a dramatic way once you start to understand that. So everybody's home for the most part. Start calling. You don't have to ask for business. You can just show up for them and ask them if they need anything. And if they need to sell or if they need to buy, they're already having those discussions right now. So just show up for them.
That's really good advice. I think a lot of times we are afraid. The word prospecting has I feel like a negative connotation because we've heard it, throughout our entire careers. And so coming from a place, something you mentioned, coming from a place of contribution, coming from a place of helping people, assisting people, because we know that people need to buy and sell, they need to move. So realizing that instead of us selling them something, sales, being a salesy, we're so afraid of that. If we come from a place of contribution, the conversations are different, right? Our intention is different. Absolutely. So, Sohail, thank you for being here. Our action for today, walking out of this, really platforming off of what Sohail has said, is developing a routine. And you may have some sort of a routine already, but let's fine tune it. Let's work it out just like Sohail has, as much as possible. A few weeks ago, we had Matt Anderson, who was a coach and author on, and he was talking about habits. And we had a habit tracker. And one of the suggestions we had at that time was to take two actions, put them on the sheet, and then track how you are completing them each day over the next month. So here is the suggestion. Today, take that habit tracker. It's attached in the email here. Take that habit tracker and write down two habits, two actions that you are going to do consistently. And it could be something as simple as making your bed every morning if that's not something you're currently doing, and all the way up to, gratitudes, to writing handwritten notes, to calling 3 people a day, 3 past clients a day, whatever it might be. Keep it simple for now, but let's start tracking that to build our morning routine so that we can really build for success. So take the habit tracker, write that out. The other suggestion is once you have that filled out, please send your routine to coffee@properties.com. We'd love to see it, and we could be an accountability partner for you. We're here to help. So please send that off once you have it completed. And we look forward to receiving those. So thank you, everyone, for joining. Sohail, we could talk and ask, many more questions and get a lot of insight. So in the future, if it would be okay if we could have you on again, that would be great.
No, happy to help. Yes.
And in the meantime, Sohail, make sure that you slot into your very disciplined routine the 15 minutes to watch, Coffee with Amy and Kevin every morning.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you guys for having me. Really appreciate it.
Yep. Thank you. Have a great day, everyone.
You.
Amy, we'll see you later today.
Yep. All right. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.